Okay, let's get started. Welcome to the Tuesday, August 11th meeting of the Richmond Conservation Commission. We have a quorum. We've got 5 people. Quorum is 4. And we have with us Bob Lowe, former RCCer and now member of the public here as well. We'll start off by getting a timekeeper and a minutes taker. I will do time if somebody else would like to do minutes.
I can do it.
You can do minutes? That would be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wilson.
Thank you.
And next up, we have minutes to approve from June 23rd, which was our ACF management plan meeting, and from our last meeting, which was on July 22nd, which was just a short, 3 weeks ago?
Can we make a motion to approve of both? Or do
We
you want to
can,
do
if
it
nobody,
one at a
I
time?
suppose. Yeah, if nobody has any comments or updates for either, then I don't see why we couldn't just nominate and approve both. But if there's discussion for one or the other, then, we might want to do it individually. But yeah, I mean, anyone can make a motion to approve one set or both sets, I suppose.
I'll make a motion to approve both of them. I thought they were really well written.
Cool. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Any discussion? No comments? Adjustments? Okay, then all in favor of approving both the June 23rd and July 21st minutes, say aye.
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 Was that everybody? Just for record keeping purposes? Yeah, okay, great. So unanimously approved. And then, we'll move on to additions or changes to the agenda, which in the future, I will just modify this or add another bullet point for public comment, just so we don't forget that. Oftentimes, we don't have members of the public here, and normally we let them chime in under item A. But I'll just put it on there to be explicit, which I think is good. That's probably more welcoming for folks that are looking at the agenda online or are looking at it on Front Porch Forum. So yeah, if there's any public comment or if any folks have additions or changes to the agenda, now would be the time.
So
I'm sorry, are you going to make a comment? Because I have an addition. So we should go first.
Go ahead, Jeanette.
Just real quickly, Kit circulated a tools list, and I didn't see it on the agenda.
Okay, so that is because we had talked about doing the tools next meeting, not this meeting. So if you recall, we had a lot.
It's fine with me. I just was wondering if
People should definitely look at it.
you actually didn't intend to do that.
Yeah, I intended for it to be next meeting because we basically had enough that we split it out across the next few, especially because we're kind of waiting to work with the library on the tool stuff.
Yeah.
So that was intentional, but I do appreciate you bringing that up because if I meant to talk about it and forgot it, I would have been disappointing. So thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, folks should check that out. Kit sent out a list. If you have anything you'd like to add or modify, if we can send your comments directly to Kit, and then we can refine that list and then publish it for discussion next meeting. And then that's what we can bring to the library. Keep in mind, the library, is it
Suzanne.
Suzanne? I was going to say, it's not Susanna. It's Suzanne asked that it be a somewhat short list. I feel like we can always expand on it later. So we should really try to narrow it down to, what has a wide variety of uses and like what's a good amount of stuff to start with.
Yeah, so I think Kit sent a list. It's a wish list. If she hasn't heard from you, keep sending her what you want. But it's my understanding the next meeting, we'll refine it during the meeting.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Sure. Cool. That's a great call out. And then Bob, do you have a public comment?
I may or may not, if I can reserve, you may answer all my questions under ACF updates.
Okay.
So,
Well,
So I could wait till then if that's appropriate.
Yeah, that's fine. I normally, unless there's something not on the agenda,
Right?
that someone wants to comment about, normally when I run meetings, I'll just do a topic, the commission will usually discuss it and then we'll open it up for public comment. I guess I should be more explicit in that, but we can
No.
pause there and you can weigh in as
Yeah.
desired.
Super.
So yeah, I guess we'll just do that now. So moving on to updates. First up, we've got ACF updates. So last meeting, we discussed this a bit. There was a public comment or public feedback meeting held by the select board on June 29th. A lot of folks chimed in. Some favored the plan, some did not favor the plan. And ACF had their first meeting since that public feedback meeting last week, in part because I was out of town, and also it was hard to get a quorum because we're close to a bare quorum at this point on that committee, and it's also summertime. So we just were able to get to some of that last meeting and kind of parse through that. We're still trying to figure out exactly how to handle all of that feedback. I think the non-controversial stuff is going to get integrated into the plan, but then there's more controversial stuff that we're still not entirely certain what to do with. I think the committee, by and large, is still supportive of the plan that we came up with, but it seems like, I don't know, some outreach, I think, is going to need to be done to members of the community who are not in favor of the plan to sort of maybe educate them on what the plan does and does not stipulate, because it seemed like there were potentially some misconceptions about like what is and is not possible under the plan. So that's sort of like the feedback. Some of that was reviewed last meeting. On top of that, I guess the biggest major development is last meeting. Jim Cochran made a proposal for a trail to connect to SIP, which was briefly discussed for probably about 10 minutes at the end of last meeting. It seemed very clear that the committee was not ready to consider that because that's a very big request. And so we started a working group with Jim, myself, and Wright, which is well under a quorum, to explore possibilities for what that could look like in context of whether or not that could sit within the existing management plan. So basically, we started to write up a memorandum of understanding that would basically see if it was possible to bring different parties in the town together to sort of see if we can agree on certain things. But that's still in draft form. But basically, it would probably involve the select board, Richmond Land Trust if necessary, ACFC, RCC, RTC, and then maybe Richmond Mountain Trails. That's kind of tricky. I don't know how they fit in because I feel like RTC has kind of ceded some of their, I don't want to say like responsibility, but like a lot of the trail management and outreach and organization in Richmond is actually done by Richmond Mountain Trails and not done by the Trails Committee. So and also the Trails Committee doesn't record their meetings, and usually their notes are rather sparse. So I'm a little bit confused as to what role RTC even really plays in the community. And on top of that, I still have not received any even acknowledgement of the receipt of the management plan, which was sent back in May or June. So I don't know. I know they discussed it one meeting, but no feedback was sent to ACFC. So in any case, the plan is to try to come up with some kind of framework where it's guided by the draft MP2 as it stands to see if it's possible to work within the bounds of what the committee came up with, using all of the buffers and the trail development parameters and whatnot. So go ahead.
Question. I'm just curious because that seems like a real departure from where you had been working, which is let's lay down the management plan without a trails plan and get that approved first. So this seems like a real departure from that. So I'm
Yeah.
just curious why you've chosen to run in that direction.
The
reason?
Yeah, the reasoning is, and I'm still trying to sort of tease out like responses from certain members of the community, especially the select board. But based on what I heard in the meeting from the select board and hey Jack, I am not convinced that they're ready to move forward with approving the plan. And it seems like because a lot of the comments were split, we were trying to see if we could potentially work with other members of the community to just talk about what was even possible under the management plan. So the plan isn't to change. It isn't to change the MP2 as it exists. It would basically continue to continue to sit at like basically any like talks about this would have to sit like within the management plan draft.
Mhm.
So
So is this giving a fast track to a SIP trail versus
No.
other trails? So a walking trail, say, or a community trail or something, some other trail that might be developed would potentially be developed before this trail or at the same time? I'm just curious why one trail is kind of getting a special. It feels like one, I guess my
Sure.
comment is one trail feels like it's getting special dispensation.
Yeah, it's mostly to try to get folks to come together to talk more than anything.
Mhm.
I mean, like a memorandum of understanding is not a binding contract. I guess it's but it could potentially lead to one, and it's still in the works. And who knows, it might not even work out at all. But it doesn't necessarily mean that nobody else could propose a different trail or move forward with something else. It's to try to get a conversation going around what was the most consistent comment that ACFC got about the management plan, which was trails in the north and a potential connection. But I'm still firm on not deviating from anything that's in the MP2, those guidelines, and also not guaranteeing a trail just for the sake of connecting or trying to please some kind of community. It's basically to try to show folks in the community that we're trying.
Meeting on my hand.
This is the Conservation Commission.
Okay.
Just giving an update on the Andrews Forest Committee. So yeah, that is kind of where things stand. It still hasn't even been brought to a full committee for discussion, so it's still just a working group. But that's just sort of an update for full transparency on what's going on right now. There was a motion. It wasn't, or there was not a motion. There was a proposal. There was no motion. It was tabled. And yeah, we were trying to see if like anything can come of that. And if so, there was also potential talk about trying to get a few non-ACFC members to also join that working group to get more input, so potentially somebody from either this commission or like sort of somebody who's on the more like conservation side of things, and then somebody who's more on the trail side of things. So who knows, maybe it'll just totally dissolve, but it's at least an attempt to try to take some of the feedback, get a group together to talk about where there's common ground and if it's possible to move forward under the current framework. But it's not putting a map or any trails like into the management plan. It's to see if it's possible to sort of prove out some of what's in the management plan so that the select board has confidence that they can get community buy-in and approve it. But it could be that the select board wants to sign it next week, in which case this would all be unnecessary. But like, I don't know if that's the case.
I
Jeanette?
watched the video and heard you say that one incentive to do this is to consider a special trail to sip of sunshine in the northern zone, even though that kind of runs contrary to the two zone concept. Is that there's an interest in the proof of concept approach, which is, okay, how would this plan play out when it comes to trails, either improving them, developing them, expanding them, whatever.
Yep.
So my biggest question is, why wouldn't we start low? You know, if that's what you're trying to do, to show to the public that access is absolutely a goal.
Mhm. I think, quite frankly, because that's not what the critics of the plan are looking for in any, in any way, shape, or form. I think that trying to pursue a different trail, whether that's a wetlands reroute or another trail in the south, is going to seem like a bad faith effort, and to just either stall or to just try to pursue something else as sort of like misdirection. So I think that ultimately it's just to try to listen to the folks that had, criticisms of the plan, and to see if it's possible to find common ground with them, in good faith.
I
And
mean, we had criticisms too. They were constructive ones, so
sure.
I wouldn't paint the picture that there were those who absolutely approved it and those who didn't. And it's just trying to understand the rationale behind where the critics are coming from.
Yeah.
I think it's important to ask these questions.
Yeah, for sure. Which is, part of why we're having the working group. Like, some of the stuff has already been discussed and talking about like
I don't
pursuing.
know if you want me to be a part of the working group, but I'd love to throw them out because I think they help you.
Mhm.
Could I just go ahead and, you don't have to answer them, but I'll just throw them out.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, one is, well, how would a mountain bike trail in the northern zone fit with our plan to keep that area quieter and lower impact? Wouldn't making an exception in the northern zone for a popular sport like mountain biking undermine the two-zone compromise we just unanimously supported as a group? Another question is, how would we monitor and enforce a 10-user daily limit with 4 entry points, especially if they attract mountain bikers? Another question is, if we allow one bike connection through the northern zone, how would we address future requests for additional trails? And my last question is, maybe before considering an exception for bikers, we could assess its impacts on habitat, connectivity for wildlife activity in general in the forest, and look at probable impacts on steep slopes based on existing trails in town.
Can you reiterate that last point?
Do is send these to you.
Sure, that'd be
For
helpful.
your working group, but the last one, if you want me to reiterate that, is more of a suggestion, which
Okay.
is maybe before considering an exception for bikers, because it's really the biking group, biking community that wants that one trail. We could assess its impact on habitat, connectivity for wildlife activity in general in the forest, because we've talked about getting some baseline data. And look at probable impacts on those steep slopes based on existing trails in town. Because it's my understanding from listening to the video, I watched the recording of the meeting, is that, and I saw the maps, is that the trail, or at least the concept map, would definitely need to navigate some really steep slopes.
Mhm. Yep. Yeah, so some of this stuff is still being discussed for quick answers. How would a mountain biking trail fit with the plan to keep it quiet, and wouldn't that compromise the existing plan and like sort of the zonal approach?
Yeah.
Part of what's been discussed would be if it was even possible, which would have to pass, like planning and, scoping and all that stuff, which is its own, prerequisite. I'm also would be advocating for a phased approach that would not allow mountain bikes at first. So you'd basically build a trail and you would not allow bike traffic. And we would start monitoring as soon as possible. I've already reached out to Brandon Benedict, the county forester. I was also hoping to get more. Well, I'd be curious if folks here have thoughts on that. We could talk about that maybe next meeting or something. But I was also planning on reaching out to John Cart, about getting more information on how you would develop and implement a monitoring plan that might include, purchasing, I would assume would be, like include potentially purchasing, equipment like cameras, trail counters, I guess that would be later, but audio traps and whatnot. So you could basically get baseline data now and then, potentially scope and develop and monitor and then be able to compare that against the baseline. So
When you say down, you mean for a full year, so you can see seasonally what's happening?
that would be the hope, yeah. And yes, exactly.
Built and then monitored for a year before bikers are allowed onto it?
No, it would be monitored for a year before it was built.
Okay. before-
And then it would be continually monitored. But yeah, again, this is all like very like formative
Yeah.
stuff, that hasn't even really been solidified. To enforce the 10 user daily limit, we've talked about trail counters. We've also talked about, starting, with limited traffic, foot traffic only. We'd have to flesh that out.
So how would you do that system? Like how would you monitor only 10 users a day?
Well, we've talked about having like a sign-in sheet, which would be sort of an honor system, but we've also, if we had a,
4 entry points, because there's 4 now.
well, not for that trail.
Well, Sip of Sunshine, VYCC, Maple Wind, and the ACF parking lot.
But a trail only has two ends. So basically, it's not for the whole
You would
forest.
get up to that trail from all 4 entry points.
But you would have to pass the trail at a point, unless you were bushwhacking and then just ended up on the trail with your bike. Then, so basically I'm just saying
you
trail
would-
counters
And you would sign it at the start
of the trail.
one trail.
So there'd basically be, a log, I guess, at either end of the trail. That's one thing. Also, with a trail counter,
So 2 signups from one.
potentially, yes. But again, this is still like
People know on one end if there's people.
we're still discussing it. I mean, I think we're really getting ahead of things here because this is still in subcommittee. I'm trying to be transparent and let folks here know what's going on. And it may be that if somebody is interested in being a part of that working group, that we'd be happy to bring in a couple more members from the community, from like differing perspectives to try to like help form something that would be widely accepted by the entire community. The plan was to start with just the 3 of us to get the conversation going and get a bit of a framework before we have 5 or 7 people in a group that are trying to talk through something, which is just going to take much, much longer. So, yeah, I think that these are good questions and a lot of them have already been, discussed and we're continuing to refine them. And it hasn't even been, weighed in on by the entire committee yet. And so all this is subject to change. So I think this is a little beyond the scope of updates, and this is turning into a full like discussion on, on ACF, which we can certainly do.
I wasn't expecting you to delve into it deeply to try to answer those questions. I just thought it'd be helpful for you guys to start fielding the questions.
Yeah, for sure.
Invite people in your working group. We're going to ask these hard questions.
Yep. And some of the other things that have been considered are, this would be sort of like if it's possible to make this, to put in a trail that, then there would be either like a decades long moratorium, or this would be the only trail that could ever go in, that would allow a bike or something like that. Those are other things that have been discussed to address your, if we allow one bike connection, how do we address future trails? So, sort of like everything's like on the table and we're still sort of throwing the spaghetti at the wall to see like what could work, what couldn't work, what are concerns. There have been a lot of concerns and there have been a lot of ideas generated and thrown out. And so this is just trying to get some kind of discussion going. And so, yeah, we'll see. To be quite honest, some of it is also in response to and trying to figure out how much feedback is just, posturing and politics, because there are multiple people who have mentioned both in public and in private that like there's a talk of potential petition to get the select board to allow a trail or to revert back to the former management plan that had it, looking more like a bike park, adopting, the trails, 5 or 6 trails in the north. So it's my opinion that it'd be better to work with the members of the public who are frustrated than to try to just say, no, we did the right thing here. We're not going to listen to you. And then they bring a petition and then it becomes a big dramatic, drawn out political discussion in the community. So we're just trying to operate in good faith here and have discussions with people who are clearly unhappy with the current state of the management plan. I still think the management plan's good, and I think that it's possible to have discussions within the context of the framework that's already existing. And so hopefully that will happen and we can move forward with it. But if it can't, I still stand by the work the committee did. So if it's not possible to do anything based on the current parameters, like I do think that that's the right call, like if the buffers don't allow for a trail connection, then like we shouldn't put in that trail. And so I'm pretty firm on that because I do think that the parameters and the guidelines have to, have to come first, like they're prerequisites for any responsible trail development. But I don't think we're going to get this management plan approved until there's less disapproval, in some parts of the community. But it could be I'm wrong.
There's a wide range of users in the trail community.
Yeah, I got you.
And that are frustrated with not being able to enjoy the forest.
Yep.
To see some improvement on the existing trails. So, and I really appreciate the work that you've done. You've really, done a tremendous job leading the charge to really plow through this and get this final draft done.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say, I hope that this new development isn't going to hold us back from, allowing a wide range of people other than bikers to enjoy the forest.
Yeah, that's not the intention at all. Other potential clauses that have been talked about is closing off other trails, entirely to bike traffic to allow, for, walker only, like more accessible trails. Like, again, there's a lot that's been talked about and, it's still being sort of like refined in trying to figure out like what would make the most sense. But we do understand that there's like a wide variety of users. We're not trying to just cater to bikers. We're just trying to have some, some progress, because we basically came out of that public feedback meeting with no directions from the select board. We had a bunch of comments from people supporting it and some people not a fan of it. And we're basically not given any direction at all. So we're trying to find some way forward that works for folks. So that's just kind of, what we're trying to work through right now. So it's not easy, but I think we're making progress, and it could be we have a few steps forward and then a step back and then a few steps forward and a step back, but hopefully we can come up with something that has like community support and more buy-in from folks. And I would encourage folks to continue to give feedback here, and then also you can send feedback directly to the committee or attend the forest committee meetings. If this does move forward and it seems in any way irresponsible to anyone here, then like I would hope that folks would continue to submit feedback and be critical of anything in any type of plan to try to move forward with something like that. So I'm in a tricky spot, being both the RCC representative to the committee, but also being the chair and needing to be like impartial and needing to try to make progress and try to get this thing across the finish line. So I'll do my best to continue relaying feedback to the committee, but it also is helpful to get that feedback directly to the committee and not always just like in this, venue and then me passing that back on. But yeah, I think that is probably all we should do for ACF updates for now. But I'll continue to put that on our meetings. It's been a pretty, major topic every time we discuss it. It usually takes 20 to 30 minutes to talk about it. We are at a pretty critical spot. So I'll continue to put it on our agenda so we can at least do check-ins. And then I hope folks will continue to weigh in with their thoughts. And if we do want an additional person on that subcommittee or working group, I'll reach out and see if there are any hand raisers. Although I do want to, first I'll read this comment that Chelsea submitted, and I do want to give Bob a chance to weigh in because he had asked to weigh in on ACF stuff. So yeah, Bob, why don't you, if you have a comment, you can go ahead first, and then I'll read Chelsea's.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. I think
Sure.
I, believe it or not, would be willing to join a working group. I, in fact, already, for example, have gone through each and every comment made at the select board and put a response to those comments, be they in favor of or against the current trails plan. Comment number one. Number two, I was under the impression the select board was not going to approve anything at that meeting, but was going to provide advice as to what they thought should happen. That needs to be clarified. And I'm worried that you seem to think that you're going to decide what to do based on what the select board tells you to do. You guys have been hired as the local experts on an issue related to the forest. You guys need to establish a position with rationale. Let me also say something, iterate or maybe reiterate now. Trails plans do not belong in the MP at all. They are an implementation which follows an MP and follows the guidelines of the MP. And next is the question that I think you guys really have to grapple with. What is your position? Should there, could there, will there not be, will there be trails above some certain cost boundary lines, for example, the vast trail? What is your position? My position, as you probably know, having read the MP2, is that there can be no trails for a variety of reasons. And then finally, when will a new draft be available for us all to look at? That's a lot of stuff, sorry.
No, that's all good. I think I captured all those. I've got, you would be willing to join a working group. ACFC has been charged with being the experts for the select board, so we don't necessarily need to wait for their direction. Trails do not belong in the management plan at all. What's ACFC's position on trails? Should there be trails at all, north of the former Vast Trail, for example? And when will a new draft of the management plan be available for review? Did that capture everything correctly?
I think it does, but include what is the RCC position?
Oh, RCC is not.
Well,
Okay,
both. Well, but
okay.
mostly RCC. If you had to vote tonight, what would you vote? No trails, possible trails, lots of trails? What would you vote? And why? I'm not asking you to do that, but you guys have to make that decision.
Cool. Yeah, those are all really good comments. Thank you, Bob.
And when might we do that? It doesn't seem like, I know there's a lot on the agenda. I appreciate that. I wonder, do we want to return to this next meeting and
Yeah, I think that's
these questions?
yeah, I think that is a good call. I'll write that down as a note.
Yep, good for you.
All right, discuss ACF trails. Cool. Yeah, I'll put that as a bullet under the ACF updates, I guess, and discussion for next meeting. And then I just want to read Chelsea Brooks' comment. I know I missed the public comment period, but I have a quick question. Has Richmond Mountain Trails reached out to RCC about developing a trail maintenance mowing, brush hogging schedule for avoiding the spread of invasives and protection of nesting birds. That is kind of related to ACF stuff. I have not personally been reached out to. So I'm assuming no, unless somebody else here has gotten direct communication from them. I think they were also kind of waiting for us to provide them with some guidance. Like they basically said they'd be willing to work with us if we gave them guidance on things like best practices for cleaning equipment, mowing schedules for certain trails.
Sent something.
Oh, you did?
It's already.
Okay, cool. I can follow. Do you want to follow up with Max?
I CC'd you. You might have it.
Okay, I'll look for that. I can follow up with Max either way, and see if they posted anything on the at the tool shed on Maplewood Farms property, which is where Richmond Mountain Trails has been storing their equipment. Thanks, Chelsea. Okay, so moving on, Jeanette, do you have an update for Richmond Pulls Together Weed of the Month?
Oh, just really quickly, we've done a couple this summer. That seemed quite successful. We got out all the poison parsnip in Southview in July, and I've been scoping with John Cart and Daniel Schmidt for bittersweet to find some small patches that can be managed in an hour's time with a group of neighbors. So stay tuned.
Great.
I'll tell you what we learned.
You might want to consider the Browns Court. The park has it on both sides. There's some just before you pull into the parking lot. There's also some on the far side past the pickleball courts.
Oh, good to
So
know.
that's a great bittersweet.
Oh, bittersweet, yeah, okay. Yeah,
And
the garlic mustard up there too.
yeah, the garlic mustard is really everywhere. I'm just trying to think of that. Just seems like a good plot because I haven't seen a ton of non-native species there, but there's definitely some bittersweet. It's not like they're big, thick vines, but there's enough that might be a good targeted area. And it's also, a shared space that people would notice the impact. So, yeah.
Anybody else has ideas that come up after this meeting, let me know.
Cool. All right. So next up, I guess, we do have the herbicide use discussion, but I do want to recognize, it's Jack, right?
Yes.
Jack Linn. I did put on the agenda addressing erosion on the Linn property. I did forward an email to you all about that. Yeah, I guess because you were here a couple minutes after public comment, so I'd be curious to hear your thoughts about how things are going on your property, and we could potentially consider moving that discussion. I hate to just keep you here all meeting to hear us talk about other stuff if you're just trying to give an update.
I was just wondering, and it's just not my property, it started off with the flood discussion here the other day. And that they're talking about just lower level floods, down after the water is built up over land. And I have 3 parcels up on Williams Hill, and all 3 culverts that cross Williams Hill Road all end up on my property. And I don't know if you've sent the pictures out where.
I have some.
Yeah.
Looking at them right now.
I've been in land use for 50 years or since it started. Right now I can't get to the back of my woods because that real washout has all happened since 2018. There used to be a power line that ran down there, and they took the power line out, and now where that power line is, it's an incredible chasm. I had let's see, who was that? I had the forester, and then I had friends of Winooski I've been trying to reach for 20 years. And the water that goes not down just my hill, Bob Lowe's hill, Stage Road, and all the hills ends up down here. And the flood starts up on the hills.
Right.
Right now, I'm trying to work out, I've been in land use and done my own projects. I have a Ford, small tractor, and only do it in the winter and try to do best practices and all that kind of stuff. But age and old injuries doesn't allow me to do it much more. So I'm really not looking for you. I want somebody to look at the runoff that starts the floods in the Winooski River, in the Huntington River, in Johnny Brook. It's the three culverts. I'm the culvert I have one culvert that it comes down from up ahead Williams Hill Road, goes through a neighbor's property, and then goes through my logging road. And I've got to put an 8-foot culvert in there. The culvert alone is $4,000. And then play with it all the way down the road. I'm looking for some advice. Best excavator that handles this, that's really what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to grab some money. I'm looking for Vermont Family Farms, Dave Bryn over in Bristol, I've worked with, and he's come out and looked at it too. But any advice that you could give to not just me, but any landowner, because you're not going to go on my property and do anything. But give me some advice. What's the best way? I've talked to Pete Goslin on how to manage the runoff before it gets into a chasm. That chasm, I have no idea how I can do anything with. And there's boulders down there the size of a Volkswagen that were never even seen before. And that's all happened in the last maybe 7-8 years. There was no runoff there. And so that's really what I want to point out to you guys, is that you can deal with the projects down here below, but they all begin up in the hills.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any other landowners that feel the same as I do, that I'm sure there are. Bob maybe have some stuff running off up there. That's all I'm here for, really.
One of my neighbors has gully erosion in the stream.
I can't hear you.
One of my neighbors has gully erosion in the stream that runs behind their property. Where it's
Where's that?
off Jericho Road.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not as wide as yours is, but their original stream bed was maybe 10 or 12 feet wide, and it would normally only run in the middle. But now it's and it was only maybe a couple feet basin, but now you could stand, it's probably 5 or 6 feet deep.
Yeah.
Before it runs over to a ravine, which then carries it under Jericho Road. And that culvert on Jericho Road is compromised now from that, and then the other stream that run into it.
Yeah.
And then Pete had to fix that, I think this spring or summer already, because the shoulder was caving in.
Yeah, you go up Stage Road.
Yeah.
Or go up, Stage Road. The guy built the house and cleared 3 acres and put grass on it. The grass doesn't stop water going downhill. And I don't have a solution. Because I don't know what you do, but recommendations, book or read some recommendations of somebody that in the state that is knowledgeable about hillsides and not necessarily the floodplain of the Huntington River or the Winooski River. The agricultural people have all their ducks in a row, and they got their own administration. David Conant has people helping him all the time from the Department of Agriculture here in the floodplain. But that water started on the top of my hill. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until something happens.
I don't have a direct solution with like excavators and stuff, but this is another topic on the planning commission is working on stormwater rules for development, which would be new development, to potentially manage some of the stormwater runoff from new impervious surfaces to be held on site and at least either infiltrated on site or evaporated or at least slowed and then released over time. So that's something that is happening right now. But I'd say there's no consensus on the planning commission as to what level of management, how many inches of rain over what period of time, or what size projects should even be included in this.
I put part of my land there, the part in front of that, I put it into beaver ponds or settling ponds. There
Mhm.
must be a way of numerous settling ponds, settle it out. When it gets high, it goes down into the next settling pond and just holds it until it goes into the water or doesn't rush down
Yeah.
into another road. That's something beyond my skill level.
I really appreciate you bringing up, looking at the sources of what's coming down
Yeah.
here. And I've always thought, and I don't know if we're the group to do that. Maybe someone's got a brilliant idea. Maybe we want to get a group of environmental engineers from UVM to trace the sources of where
Oh, that'd be
the
cool.
water is coming from.
Yeah.
And make their recommendations, because,
Yeah.
there is even innovative ideas about leaving beaver ponds alone up high. So that they can store
Yeah.
the water the way they did historically. They would create sort of what looked like a pearl necklace all the
Yeah.
way down into the valleys where that water had a place to go before it inundated the valleys.
Yeah. See, up on my left side of the property I have up there, it's a steep hill, it's all through the woods. But the water wants to channelize,
Yeah,
I don't want it to channelize, I'll drop a tree across it and kind of spread it out, so it doesn't. If it starts channelizing, then it's tough. But this area where that's pretty flat. That's actually pretty flat, but it just decimated. And I hadn't been out there a couple of years. When I went out there with the friends of Winooski, they were blown away. Geez, I've never seen anything like that. The pictures don't do it justice. They don't. So someplace or other, you should think about that.
Cool. Well, yeah, we appreciate you keeping us up to date. And yeah, I think we are going to talk about stormwater stuff later. And we are really interested as a commission in looking at problems in Richmond holistically and not just looking at flooding in the actual Winooski. And also we've been having discussions over the past few months about how do we do a better job looking at problematic areas that are not on public land, because they have an effect. Everything comes downstream, not just with water, but with invasive species and whatnot. So we have been having discussions about some of this stuff, and we are interested in trying to see what ways can we mobilize and try to start doing more for the community that's not just in at the town green or some public land.
Find the experts.
Yeah,
Find the experts and send them up to me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Will do. So I guess.
and maybe find the towns.
Was it?
Maybe find the towns that are leading the way
Yeah.
in New England. Maybe
Yeah.
some towns have figured this out and
Yeah.
they have models for us to consider.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you.
Jack, I just forwarded you a cool document called Living in Harmony with Streams.
Was it?
It's a document called Living in Harmony with Streams, a citizen's guide to how streams work, that the Friends of Winooski helped put out like 15 years ago, and it kind of disappeared, but it's so enlightening and useful. I just forwarded it to you and to all of us.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Might give you some cool ideas and illustrations.
That's a pamphlet or something, or other?
Yeah, it should be just come up as a PDF. I think I just emailed it to you.
Okay, I'm not very computer literate.
Okay.
I don't have a cell phone, and my son may be able to help me on that.
Okay. Yeah, it used to be a printed pamphlet, but I haven't seen it around in a long time, but it's still in there.
Yeah. it's not.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about is, I think they call it intermittent streams.
Yep. Yep.
Versus streams.
Yeah.
Because if I go out there, maybe I went out there today and the ground was wet.
Yeah.
But by Friday it won't be.
Yeah.
And there'll be no water running down through it. So,
The one other phrase you might research in the world of permaculture, they talk about this a lot, to keep water on site for longer.
right.
Slow it,
I'd love to.
slow it, spread it, sink it.
Yeah,
Those three, slow it, spread it, sink it.
yeah.
If you research that about, you're gonna find cool stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sure.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks, Jack.
Is it intense, big?
Okay, so we'll move on. Sorry for the out of order agenda items. But I figured we're probably going to be talking about these next couple for a few and didn't want to hold Jack until 9 o'clock. Okay, so moving on, herbicides, which we've talked about a little bit. But yeah, sort of like the framing for this was, we want to talk about this RFP and we want to talk about, managing, land in town. We've been doing the Richmond polls together. We're talking about, replacing, removing and replacing, and some of the stuff that we're confronting, is pretty stubborn and, has spread very far. And so in the context of the RFP, we had talked about, well, what if the recommendations by contractors is we want to use herbicides to get rid of, knotweed or, Phragmites or whatever, and so, yeah, it seemed like it warranted a discussion about herbicide use in general and whether or not RCC, is in favor or not. And if it, whether or not it's ever appropriate, for suggesting herbicide use and whether or not that's something we are comfortable supporting as a commission. So that's what this discussion is. So I think that it is worth noting that we are an advisory body. We're not necessarily like going to release a statement, or vote on this, make a motion and vote on it. But I think it will be helpful to know where we stand as a commission. And this is a chance for folks to, bring up their thoughts on this matter. As much as I would like for it to be like an open discussion, I know we have a tendency to sort of like draw on about this stuff. So I think the way I'd like to start is to just allow everyone who would like to speak like a couple minutes to share their thoughts without sort of direct responses to one another. We can kind of go around and each share our thoughts on the matter, and then we can come back around and then sort of share follow-up thoughts and then see, where we're at time-wise, because I could see us talking about this for the next hour and then we're going to be out of time. So as much as I'd like to have a thorough discussion about this, I do think we're going to have to sort of run this almost in a sort of Robert's Rules of Order kind of style, which is going to be everyone gets a couple minutes and then we'll come back around for responses. You don't have to speak if you don't want to. But yeah, I think that's going to be the best way for us to have a discussion that remains focused and on task and doesn't take an hour. So with that, I guess I'll sort of open the floor up to anyone who would like to give thoughts on, herbicide use in general and, what their thoughts are, if they're pro, if they're against, and, if, so why?
I think it's hard to know, it's very hard to say yes or no.
Mhm.
And unless we know what the scale of, the section we're doing. But I do, initially I would say absolutely not. And then when you think about it, we don't know how much it costs for herbicides, non-herbicide versus herbicides. I suspect there's bigger cost if we don't use herbicides, right? I mean, did we talk about that at one point? And I think if it were going to risk not doing anything at all because it would be too expensive. I'd rather do something. And that would mean possibly using herbicides. And, you know, I think that we'd have to really assess the professional group that we had and really trust them. And I guess that's where I stand, or I don't know. I can't say yes or no right now. It's hard to know.
Yeah, it is definitely a nuanced topic. Cool. Anyone else like to give their thoughts?
I'm gonna go next because I drafted a potential policy document
Oh, wow.
that maybe we would want to then be able to reference together for this discussion or later. Very much a draft where I tried to think a little bit of how such a thing ought to look officially, but also just if you turn the first is going to be too much text for us to make much sense of quickly, but the back even started to create a rubric for how we could score what individual sites are most in need of it.
Mm-hmm.
So that'd be one thing of like you were saying, Kate, of what how would we decide? Firstly, you can decide which invasives we want to care about would seem important to me. Because if you just suddenly say everything's fair game, well, they're everywhere. A lot of these we're gonna have to have some piece with that. We're not gonna get them all. So which sides we care about? I think something like this would be helpful for us. So we could approach, or if landowners approach us, or if we're talking about managing, I walked the Overrocker Trail today with the guy from the Intervale, and we were talking about how if we were to hire them, what we would focus on. We could have a document like this to show this is why we're working on this area and not some other area. So that to me is one thing I would highlight of this, and we can all bring these home and or you can get feedback tonight either way. But then another thing I just in this opening remarks is I really like, I have it in italics at the bottom of page 1, that I lifted a lot of this from the NOFA standards for organic land care. So NOFA, Northeast Organic Farmer Association, full of really smart agroeconomists, agroecologists, ecologists, engineers. So I really trust and respect what they are up to. And they have something, treatment escalation and native replacement principles. So how much you escalate in your determination to get rid of a particular species, and that it always ought to come up with native replacement. Because as I've got up in part 5 about number 5, how we would do moderating, cleared second bullet point, cleared ground is replanted with appropriate native species rather than left bare, since bare ground invites reinvasion. So those 2 principles to me that we would be, 3. One would be mechanical and manual all the time for as long as possible until we determine on something that triggers it and says, okay, let's finally consider bringing out the big guns of what we know to also be a toxic, not risk-free endeavor for the people using it, for the people handling it, for the people who produced it in a factory, for the wind drift that day, like compared to people maybe cutting themselves with a pair of loppers, like it's just more dangerous stuff. So that is a kind of last resort, is what I'm advocating. This manual mechanical removal primary method for 99% of what we do, herbicide application as a secondary last resort. And I have some language there of when we might consider that. So that's my opening, is feeling like there's definitely the ongoing philosophical discussions. I almost don't think we would ever reach full consensus, but as a guiding principle that we aren't a golf course, we aren't the feds who are just managing 1,000-acre farm fields where they'll find just blasting the edges for canary grass because it impacts corn. Like people are using this stuff in vast quantities on vast sites where you could be small enough and nimble enough that I feel like we can largely avoid it. And that's probably about my 2 minutes. So that's some opening from me here. Happy to have this be part of discussion tonight. I'll forward it as a document to everybody. we get to talk about it more next time. I'm really not, I totally promise you this, I'm not attached to really any of it in terms of like the order, how it's set up. There's probably better ways to do this. I'm sure there are, but I felt like something written down could be helpful.
Can you send it now?
Yes.
Because then Sam could screen share it.
Yeah.
In case Chelsea's still
Yeah,
on.
good
She
idea.
Texted me about seeing it. So
Sorry, who texted?
my wife.
Okay. Because listening in?
Yeah.
Cool. Hello, wife.
So I think she'd be interested in
What's her name?
seeing it. Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Yeah.
Hi, Chelsea.
I say check
Yeah, where the
in,
camera is,
this
there's-
is excellent, this is so
And
helpful.
Good start.
Really,
Cool.
it's gonna help us tremendously. It covers all the points I was gonna make. And the only thing that I would add to it is that I support, RFP that I reviewed, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit more because I think getting professional expertise is much needed in this town. The problem is growing to the point where it's beyond the scope of what hardworking volunteers can manage. I think it indicates that our preference is that we prioritize effective non-chemical methods first and use herbicides only when necessary, with clear justification and careful targeting, timing, and monitoring to protect the river and the wildlife that live there and around there. And you came up with this really cool rubric to help us figure out how to do that. This could be really helpful. Thank you.
I just sent to Sam because it's still only in Pages. Do you have a Mac and Pages?
I can work with that.
Did that work? But I can take the time to put it in.
No, I got you. Melissa, would you like to
Sure.
give some comments?
I think that we will be smacked with some realism when and if people respond to the RFP and how they propose to proceed. And I think that there will be much herbicide proposal because it's really hard to do something like Japanese knotweed mechanically. And so I think that, I guess what I would like to say is I feel that being a realist, that there will be a rubber meets the road moment when we will potentially have proposals coming in and we're not going to see like, oh, we're going to do all this, we're going to do this one by hand and this one by mowing and this one by this. They'll probably be herbicide heavy. So I'm not in favor of herbicides in general, but I think that, I guess the point I would like to make is that there will be, of course, a rubric will be helpful, but realism will be rule the day on some of this. And I think when we get to talking about the RFP, one of the ideas I had was to perhaps, there's a list of the invasives, perhaps prioritizing those, it's just a list. So how does garlic mustard versus Japanese knotweed fare in that? And, we probably don't want to use any herbicides on garlic mustard, but probably yes, maybe yes, I don't know, on Japanese knotweed if there's a large patch. So just, I guess, trying to put together, how we feel in theory versus what we'll actually be confronted with if we get responses to an RFP.
Thank you.
Can you clarify RFP?
Request for proposals. So the RFP is, we've been talking about refining and then putting out an RFP for getting a contractor to help deal with some of these bigger scale problems that we have on public lands, like the Richmond, like the River Shore Trail. And while we are very interested in and have included in the RFP use of volunteers whenever possible, both to get community buy-in and to reduce the cost, it seems like for some of these bigger scale infestations that we might need to rely on a professional. And so, that was sort of what kicked some of this stuff off, was our initial discussions about the RFP, and then being like, well, they're probably going to recommend, herbicides. But yeah, sorry for the acronym. Yeah, it's
Oh, it's okay.
request
Just
for
wanted to make sure I did.
proposals, which is basically just a document the town puts out for bids, and then contractors would see it and then potentially say, oh, we're interested in, in that. And then they can, usually it's sealed bidding, so people can, basically put in their bids, and then there's like a event or something where all the bids are reviewed, and then we would potentially move forward with one if we were interested in it. If we're interested in their response and like the cost. But we'd still have to fund it and whatnot. So
Trustee wants to see the rubric.
oh, sorry.
Did you-
Yeah, let me
minutes.
sorry. I guess
In the
I'm
chat. You're doing two.
I need to do things in two different places. Where was it? This one? I totally forgot that I was even operating on two screens.
It's a good point that the rubric maybe needs yet a second one about which plants and their severity.
Yeah,
Because you could have a large established monoculture of mustard, garlic mustard, but we still might not consider that a big deal compared to knotweed. Okay.
Yeah, Trevor.
So I'm not, I guess, opposed or in favor of herbicides either way. I'm just, for the most part, I feel like it comes down to like, sometimes we're either going to do something or not do something. And if it comes down to money, depending on what it is, I think it's going to have to be herbicides, especially if we're doing it on a town property. It would be nice to develop some sort of volunteer network where we had some sort of organization and like could do things manually, but we're not close to that happening. And I feel like getting a good inventory of what there is in the town and like where we can work best and achieve the most impact as volunteers would be good. And then possibly, if needed, use herbicides in some areas, but then make sure we can try to follow up and not have to go back to that again, is my opinion. General of like, I don't care either way, but I'd like, in some cases, want to do something and I don't feel like it'd be effective to do it the other way, or we're just never going to do it because we don't have enough money. And it's just going to get worse. And like at Volunteer Screen, there's like an acre of goutweed. I don't know what, at the end of the soccer fields, there's like 1 acre, I measured it, which is goutweed. And like there's a few sensitive ferns in there, bunch of garlic mustard, some sunflowers. I don't know. And like a couple of other random plant, but mostly it's like 90% goutweed. And so like I don't know what you'd do with that. But there's other places, especially along the river trail, where like it's not that bad. Like those knotweed along there probably could be manually controlled. But that goutweed, I don't know. There's no way to, like from the stuff I've looked into, there's nothing you can do with that. You'd have to like dig all the soil out and take it off site and burn it. Like because it's just the roots will just come back. Anyway, I also like the rubric in general. And because you can also modify it, you can be like, this is, we're trying to achieve certain goals. And I feel like setting a goal, then you make a rubric to try to do it. You do and you modify it based on whether you're achieving your goals or not. Make things harder, easier. You want to do something, not do something. And it's, I think, easily adaptable, and you can drop things out. Like this doesn't matter anymore. We just get rid of this whole thing. We can just change it. So I do like that. And that allows you to change your priorities and have some objective measures in applying things versus just deciding something and thinking that you're right. That's it.
Cool. Thank you, Trevor. I guess that leaves me. So I'll give a few comments. Yeah, a lot has already been mentioned. I do think that after giving this a lot of thought, I haven't been personally against the use of herbicides for managing invasive species in the context of, situations where you're not, farming or, spraying near people. But, after thinking about it, doing a little bit more research and trying to get some more context, I do feel like we do want to use it as a last resort, and that would be a smart stance. And I do think that having a rubric like this is a pretty smart way to determine like how much is too much, like have like a really tangible way to do it. Yeah, I did like a little bit of research into just, organizations in Vermont and like what their stances are on use of herbicide. Like the Nature Conservancy is says it's a legitimate use and sometimes necessary. Vermont Fish and Wildlife also uh Vermont Fish and Wildlife, Audubon, all basically say, it can be used like in a toolkit. You've got, folks like NOFA who don't, definitely don't recommend it. I believe the Intervale also has a, strictly mechanical removal policy. North Branch Nature Center is a really interesting use case where they took a really hard stance on that for the longest time, but recently decided that they had to introduce the use of herbicides for knotweed removal. And so I think that's really interesting, that they tried their best, and, they really, they're very organized and very knowledgeable, and I respect them a lot for, everything that they do. They're great educators and, really, I don't know, I really respect them. And the fact that they decided that in this context, like it's, we're going to use, herbicides. I do think there's a time and a place for it, but I do think that it's a last resort. Hopefully, we can, in some cases, mobilize enough volunteers to tackle projects mechanically before we escalate to herbicide or, using a contractor. So I think that that's another thing that we should sort of build into our rubric if that's the way we want to do it. I know she's not here tonight, but was pretty impressed with the effort that Susanna's been organizing on the LeBounties land. I attended for a little over an hour on one of the days, and I'm hoping to get a full workday in at some point when I'm available. And it was just really impressive to see that many people working together to remove Phragmites mechanically. And I guess we'll see how that project goes over time. But I think that if we can find ways to really mobilize volunteers, you can make a huge impact in a short period of time. And so to me, that was really encouraging to see, like, when you put the effort in and you can get enough people together, really like daunting project can become achievable. So yeah, those are my thoughts. I would like to have us avoid it if at all possible, but I think realistically that, yeah, there are going to be some situations where, because of the plant, because of like how much there is, because of lack of volunteers, that we might need to use herbicides. But I do think that transparency is very important, especially if we're operating on public land, posting signage, if treatment's going to happen, that's in the RFP. I think we can talk about that. And I also think that, I don't know, coordinating with Josh or the town to basically let people know that this is something that is planned so that folks are aware, because I think that, yeah, it's in the best interest of everyone, to make sure that this isn't something that just gets sprung on folks, especially in a public space. So I think that that's something we want to have a discussion about how to move forward. Like, if we were in a situation where we were going to use herbicides, that we would figure out how to do it in the most transparent way possible. So either there's an input process or there's like a notification process, so folks don't find out and feel like it's something that we're just kind of like hiding, and because we're not proud of it, and I think that we can make a good case for, like, we've really talked through this. We've been as thoughtful as possible. This is a last resort. That said, I guess we'll go back around for responses if folks would like to weigh in on anything that anyone else said, or if we want to.
I would just add one thing to what you said, which
Sure.
is to be sensitive seasonally. I hope that that's a really strong factor for us in terms of the scheduling of herbicides, if we have to use them one place or another. So for instance, we'd want to make sure the birds have migrated and the amphibians are under the mud, as well as the turtles. And Melissa brought up the reality check, which is that some of these outfits that we hire, they have busy schedules, and we might have to just fit into their schedule. And I would hope that we would have some control over the schedule.
Melissa?
I would just add that, well, it's great, we can all discuss, like, we want this thing and that thing. There's also state regulations that a contractor will have to follow. Many regulations about any kind of near rivers, wetlands, different permits for different kinds of applications and posting. And so they will be aware of and have to follow those, if they have a license, they have to follow those. So I think, it's not up to us entirely to say, well, we've got to make sure it's posted. They have to follow the regulations. And there's quite a lot of, if you delve into it, there's quite a lot of Vermont regulations around herbicide applications. So I think that we won't have to reinvent the wheel on posting and application times and regulations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I had looked up a little bit of that stuff, and there's like things like, no application within 100 feet of a wellhead and, stuff like that, like, which I was just thinking about ACF, like there's multiflora rows. I don't know where Sonia's wellhead is, but if there was a plan to use herbicide application to deal with multiflora rows, near the ACF parking lot, that might not be allowed because it might be too close to that, the well, so yeah, I think, there's definitely the strict state regs, which are, going to have to be followed, which is a good safeguard, on top of all of this. Anyone else like to make any follow-up remarks?
Sure. Could tie into some other things later. I met with Ben Rogers at the Intervale Conservation Nursery this morning, and we parked at Over Rocker Park together, and he and I were discussing some St. Mike's things, but also I wore my hat for Conservation Commission as well. And he let me know that maybe not this year, but definitely next year, and for foreseeable future, we could probably get multiple days of grant-funded manual invasives removal through a grant they always have through Lake Champlain Basin Program. So his team of a stewardship crew, which is tree planters much of the year, but then they also do sort of roving stewardship tasks, including things like removing tubes from old projects, weeding around new trees, but can also do manual invasives removal. And when looking at the Intervale as a analogous site to our river frontage, we were actually saying while walking, this feels like we could be at the Intervale. It's lowland, silver maple, silver rock, ostrich fir, and floodplain. They've had good luck with manual removal of knotweed if they're consistent at it for a few years. Probably not if you look at the other side of the river. Of course, that's just a mile of it, so that would be unfeasible. But for some of the patches we seem to have in there, a couple hits of it a year manually, they've had success at the Intervale if it's ongoing. Buckthorn successful, especially cutting it at a certain time, like I think cutting it in spring and then again in August, because that really stresses the plant out because it resprouted after you cut it in spring, and then you cut that again in like mid to late summer. That really hurts the plant pretty badly because that was a time where it was trying to recoup what it had lost. And then a third cutting the following spring. They've had success if that's it for buckthorn. So having them come with some of their knowledge and expertise, essentially as a gift through or grant funded through Lake Champlain Basin Program, and or we can hire them as a local outfit who specialize in manual removal. So they would come with their own tools, they'd come with a crew, they'd bill us a flat, reasonable rate. So when it comes to if we decide to put up what was it? RFP, request for he could certainly put in a bid. And I think it'd be one where I don't know how much beholden we are supposed to be about money as the only determinant, but a local organization worth developing a relationship with who might in turn be able to supply plants at a good price because they know it's not just for private, but for a organization working on something that's connected to their health as well. We are upstream from them after all. So it seems like a good, if we can get them to try that out as a pilot project next year, it seems like a good fit for us for not just being volunteers, sites that we could choose using this rubric or not, or just some discrete specific areas or like, let's try to give them a go on this and see how it looks. We could come up with things like, and then let's plan to plant half of it and then not plant another half and see if we see any difference. So that was one thing I'm trying to get the ball rolling a little bit on what that could look like for us. Again, probably not this year, but starting next year. And then I guess a point that Sam said that I think would be cool for all of us, or I volunteer to want to do more, is this idea of asking what other groups have done and their success. Interesting to read the North Branch one. I just started reading it quickly. Because then I also see other groups like the Mad River, Friends of the Mad River, have spent tens of thousands of dollars and have sprayed so much Roundup on knotweed up and down the Mad River. And then it pops back up.
Yep.
It just does. It travels so well, it's so successful. And in a few areas, like by popular swimming holes, because it's like an aesthetic thing it's nice to not be near it. They're doing it as like almost like you mow a lawn. But in terms of them thinking they're getting rid of it, like they just aren't. And how much of that Roundup has been produced, purchased, deployed, what is there anyway been, and ultimately I think most say a kind of losing battle. Maybe we talk to someone, they'll say otherwise. I'll admit I see this through biased lenses of how it's been presented to me. So I guess I will continue to express a general reluctance and skepticism to this wider war on it all. Like even the starting point of already invasive is bad, now how to treat them. That's already the first choice, that we are very concerned that invasives are indeed bad. And I'm not on the camp of, no, they're not bad, we should accept all of them. But to think that this is like the spear of all, or a majority of a conservation group's efforts ought to be, this invasive, not invasive, to me is already like such a, to me anyway, I mean, I guess I'm being more philosophical than maybe the meeting is good for, but I would like to continue to keep an open mind that this is one perhaps narrow band of our available ways to positively be in a landscape. It's a good one. It's easy. It's tangible. It's visible. Once you start learning invasives, you see them everywhere. And it's easy to picture how good it would feel to get rid of them. But it's not like we're surrounded by thrilling successes of people who have like had dramatic ecosystem saving efforts because they've sprayed tons of chemicals around. I don't see that. There's been some successes, and there are, and I feel like we've done some at St. Mike's, but it's not always just because they blasted tons of herbicides or that's what they put into. They did lots besides just get rid of something. So yeah, I was a little meandering there, but a few of my thoughts there. Thanks.
Thanks, Trevian.
Yeah.
Just one comment. How successful have the goats been with is it knotweed that the goats, I think it's knotweed.
No.
Does anybody?
No, I've seen them put through buckthorn.
Yeah, buckthorn,
and
that's
honeysuckle.
right. Okay.
And
They'll eat knotweed too. I think they have been trying them out in the Mad River Valley. I'd be curious to know, maybe not right now, because we probably need to move on in a minute or two, but the time frame of what you're talking about in the Mad River, because I know that the Waitsfield Conservation Commission has done a lot recently in trying to partner with UVM and like the spatial analysis lab for like mapping. And I don't know, it seems like they are trying hard to manage some of that stuff. I'm not aware of how much of that has been using, herbicides, but I know that they've, introduced like goat grazing and other stuff. And so,
Cool.
I don't know if that was the before times and now they're pivoting, or if they're doing sort of a multi-pronged approach or what. But I could follow up. I've reached out to Kurt Lindbergh, the chair of the Waitsfield Conservation Commission.
Cool.
And asked him a little bit about like their process and how things are going.
Yeah.
I could try to get some more information from him on what they've done and and his thoughts, because it seems like he was one of the examples that came up when the Winooski Natural Resources Conservation District came and spoke here earlier this year. It was sort of like a conservation and agriculture, like sort of roundtable discussion. And it ended up dipping into invasive species and management. And they had some pretty good things to say about what the Waitsfield Conservation Commission's been doing, but I don't have the full picture, so I don't really know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be curious. I
Cool.
certainly think that it's concerning that you would just spray, and it comes back, and especially if that's like a shared resource, like I feel like that's one of the biggest concerns with herbicides. It's like I'm much more comfortable with like a stump cut treatment than I am with a spray where that has so much more potential to get into all kinds of stuff, and it's just so much harder to control.
I have a question about the process. We need to get a minimum, is there a rule, a minimum of 3 competitive bids?
I can follow up on that.
Maybe
I don't
this is
think
the
so.
dovetail into the RFP discussion.
Sometimes they get one bid.
We just need one.
No, I mean, sometimes I think they only get,
We
they
might
don't,
only get one.
I mean, I don't think they always get 3.
Yeah.
You can look up the process on the.
Well, I
town
just
website.
want to be mindful of the fact that it is a competitive process, so we have to just be cognizant of that in terms of we want this to be a fair process. We want
Yeah.
each person who's applying to feel like they're getting a fair shake at.
Well, it is, it's very organized and there's like an official opening and reading of the bids. It's not like we get to open them up here.
No, I'm just saying in terms of our discussion
Right.
about who we would want to hire, we have to be aware of that.
Right, and I'm pretty sure they have to take the lowest bid.
What's that?
The town, I believe, might have to take the lowest bid.
I can talk to Josh about that. Well, let's pump the brakes for 1 second. I think we can move on to that in just a second. So just to round out this,
I brought it up because I wanted to talk about other outfits who are doing things, but I feel like I actually probably shouldn't at this point in the process.
that feels like it's more in line with the RFP discussion.
Okay.
So let me just wrap up the
Yeah.
herbicide topic, so we can move on to the RFP. It sounds like, I mean, there's a lot of great feedback here. I like the idea of revisiting this. I think that this policy that you drafted, Trevian, is really helpful, and I would be interested in exploring that and sort of fleshing out, potential rubric and at least having it be sort of like a soft policy. I don't know if this is something that the town would or could adopt, but I'm also kind of interested in like us starting to build up sort of a bank of resources that we have. So like, I don't know, I'm not going to be
Sorry, you guys. I was looking up goats and how successful they were.
But as like the committee, changes over time, and we don't want people to have to continue to like reinvent the wheel, and it's nice to have processes in place for like this is how we do things, and it can always be changed over time. But I feel like I didn't necessarily inherit a lot of processes on like, here's the way you should do things. And so trying to start to build up like some of these sort of at least conventions that we can follow, I think will be helpful for us and also helpful for, future conservation commissioners. So I would be interested in working on this policy, which I think we can kind of do in parallel. We can work on the RFP, and then we can continue to talk about this a little bit, maybe in small groups, and then maybe bring it back up for discussion at a future meeting. I think that would be a cool way to do it. And it sounds like we are relatively like-minded in terms of like, we want to deal with this problem. We don't want to just use herbicides, willy-nilly. It's more of a last resort, but we want to be practical, and we want to be able to actually make change in some of these places that are really suffering because of them. But yeah, I appreciate everybody's thoughts. And with that, I think that we should move on to the RFP, which is very closely related to what we just discussed.
Chelsea wrote in the chat.
Yeah, she did.
The no, they don't is regarding the cost. They don't always go with the lowest cost.
Yeah.
Based on watching the select board meetings, they will sometimes go with who they like, or who what if one of the bids was someone they don't like. Even if they're cheaper, they will not pick them or had negative feedback. The select board doesn't always go with the cheapest bid.
Okay,
They will go with someone that they've been using if they like them,
okay.
even if they're more money. They take feedback from people who have had bad experiences with some of the contractors.
Right, and that,
Like, I don't like this one, even though they're cheaper. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think that's a good idea. And so they often will take feedback like that.
and is it the select board and or Josh? Is this what you're gonna look into, Sam?
Yeah.
Okay,
The
As
select board
most-
usually does them.
Yeah, as Melissa mentioned, like there is a town policy. I've discussed some of this with Josh before, and yeah, I can get some like, details on that. Also, based on what we just discussed, and if this is something that we're interested in, I know I had mentioned that I was interested in us like being able to vote to approve this, but we could potentially like provisionally approve this for release if we wanted to add a few things. One thing that I'm thinking of is if it's important to us that we want to have mechanical removal and also replacement is like a big part of this. We could basically state that as part of the criteria for like a successful bid would include replacement with native species or avoidance of using herbicides. So if we put that in the criteria of the RFP, then people can file their bids or submit their bids, and we might decide, well, the Intervale is the only one who's offering to do like a replacement, with natives, and they're the only ones that are going to do this fully mechanically. And yes, maybe it's 20% more, but we feel like the value for not having to introduce invasive species, that's in line with the Conservation Commission's values. And so we'd like to go with that bid. Now, we're not going to pick it, but we can at least, make a motion to, we can state our preference to the select board and basically say like, hey, here's like what we, and it's already kind of stated in the RFP, I suppose, but we could basically say like, these are our values. We strongly, encourage a contractor that's going to do mechanical removal and a replacement with a native. And, so that'll factor in. I feel like if we
have one representative among us to do that communicating with the select board.
I don't know. I'm not sure because like sometimes like, a lot of times the bidding process like it's not necessarily associated with a specific committee. So it might just go right to the select board. But in this case.
It's a very formal process with stringent rules.
Yeah.
And I don't know all of them, but I do know that it's not like I can just show up and say, I think, I'd like you to use Joe Smith's because he's gonna plant, a native honeysuckle. I don't think it works that way.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, it would be great for us to get a hold of the town's
Yeah.
formal, so that we all understand what's gonna happen, once it's put out and how those are unsealed and read.
Yeah. That said, I mean, I guess this is a time for us to talk about how we feel about the current state of the RFP. I hope folks have had a chance to look at it. I didn't look at it this week, but I've looked at it a lot over the past few months and have been tracking the changes. One thing that I do think that just, post that discussion that I think maybe we want to consider adding is replacement, because I don't know if that's dictated. I don't think it is. And if
The treatment plan,
yeah,
which is described measures to support native plant recovery following invasive treatment. But I don't know if actually doing the planting is part of the.
It's support native plant recovery.
Right, I don't think actually doing it is necessarily part of it, because some of it's, I didn't want to be too prescriptive in it, because some species that are native invasives, you can't plant near them for years.
Mhm.
You have to wait for them to be gone for like 5 years and wait for other things to start growing, then you can replant. We learned that, we got the Intervale with
Oh, yeah.
I don't know which one it was, knotweed or goutweed. one of the ones they were removing, they had to wait before they then would put their ostrich ferns in.
The knotweed.
It was a knotweed, yeah, so you have to wait years of treating it before you put anything in, because it just, nothing else will grow there. That was, I think, the main reason I didn't put anything like specific in, like you have to do this, because like I don't know what they're doing yet. But that's why I sort of like the plan is describe your recovery plan, but I don't know. I mean, we can put it in too, I don't care, but that's why I didn't put it in all the way.
Yeah, I suppose having a plan, but I was just thinking about specifically about like evaluation criteria. If it's important to us that, you know, replacement whenever possible is part of the plan, then we could put that in the RFP. And then that becomes something of importance
I
when,
support that, Sam.
yeah, I think it also opens up more funding opportunities. Like I've heard this from the WNRCD and like other sources in which like there's not a whole lot of funding for removal of invasives because it's such a big problem. And by and large, like the state's kind of given up on it in a lot of places. But if you're pairing it with a restoration project and you're trying to, you know, put in natives, there actually are funding opportunities for stuff like that. So that also potentially opens us up to select a certain bid that has, you know, replacement and then also get grant funding. It might end up costing us less and we end up with a better result, you know, because we're removing and we're replacing. So
Where
I-
would we put that in here?
Evaluation criteria.
yeah, I think definitely in the evaluation criteria, but then also maybe we'd want to mention it like somewhere above. But it's easy enough
In
for
the treatment goals, or
Yeah.
in the project goals, which is the support native plant recovery and ecosystem restoration where appropriate. Which I guess then covers the times that it's not appropriate because you can't plant anything yet.
Yeah, I think supporting it is clear. I just want to like if we could make the language slightly firmer on that. Where not only are we trying to support natives, like if possible, we'd love to actively put them that you know plant them.
Put that in there and then add it to the evaluation criteria.
Exactly.
We just do that now. I don't want to write. I don't like writing on the fly, but if you guys want to come up with something, I'd rather prepare things ahead of time.
We could at least, we can jot down a couple things. Like if we like this RFP for the most part, and there's just a couple little things that we want to adjust before sending it to Josh or taking the next step to try to put this out for bids, I think it would be easy enough for us to say, we approve, you know, as a commission, we approve this document with the, you know, this provision that we'd like to add, you know, a line that says we'd like to see replacement with native species as part of the evaluation criteria. Melissa?
I'm wondering about the value of, I'm curious if we would like to prioritize the list of invasives. Right now, it's just a general list. And I don't put garlic mustard myself in the same category as Phragmites or Japanese knotweed. But that's not, I'm not sure that this does that. And I don't know if we want to prioritize, if we're leaving it to the,
That's what John Carr kind of said was to,
leave it.
in general, if we could leave it, I mean, I had less, I think I added one or two more on here on the list than what I had before, but I think he said, don't be too like specific. Let the people who do this tell you what they think should be done.
Okay.
And then you can tell them, no, I don't want to do that. That's about it. You know, that's not a good use for it. But I think it's also why I tried to word it, that like, if there are volunteer appropriate activities, which garlic mustard is one of them in general, that's one of the easiest
Yeah.
ones of all these.
I'm just curious why
Yeah.
they want you to prioritize.
Well, he didn't, I think, have even had goutweed originally, because he thought goutweed was kind of a not worth treating thing, because once you destroy it, then you have a giant area. Depending on like that 1 acre thing in Volunteers Green, if you were to like take that out, if you don't have a plan to do something with it, it's gonna be a mess.
Yeah, I guess if I were a contractor and I was reading this RFP,
You'd think you'd want,
I
These
would like
things.
to know a little bit more about what you want to prioritize. I guess I would read this and I would say, are they expecting everything to be treated on an equal basis? Do they want me to attack garlic mustard with the same level of
yeah,
ferocity that I'm attacking the Japanese mustard? I
My
mean, the
sense
Japanese
is
not.
that their expertise is such that they sweep through and they give us a sense of what we've got. They do an inventory.
Mhm.
And then they use a rubric to prioritize based on their expertise.
Okay.
So they would say to us, this garlic mustard isn't really worth it. I think at least in the first phase of the project, here are the three plants that we think you really need to get on for the first part of the project. I think it works something like that.
I don't really know.
Well, that's what John had said, and that's
Yeah.
why he encouraged us to sort of just give a general list at this
Okay.
point.
But you also don't limit it to a list because they might find something you don't know is there.
Right.
That should be taken, you might want to take care of. So don't tell them it has to be this list and only this list.
No, and that's not what I'm suggesting.
I know, I
I'm
just-
suggesting
yeah.
maybe.
Yeah, high priority
just
targets.
Have some priorities,
Yeah.
but maybe we don't.
Yeah. Yeah, we kind of went back and forth on this. I don't know.
I think I had no list before.
Oh,
I think my original version had no target list. I think when I talked to Sam once, we put the list back in.
Yeah. And yeah, I recall John mentioning the same. Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's why I removed the list in the first version of this.
interesting.
Was just tell us what you think. Without us directing you to like find certain things that we think need to be treated, and maybe those aren't the right ones.
Yeah.
But then we just put the list back in. I think because we want to make sure they didn't, I don't know, miss things, or we're clear that we know these are around. I don't know. I don't know if there's a right answer.
It seems like then we would have a secondary back and forth of, all right, this is what you're proposing to do everything. But now can you send us a second one that's just knotweed?
Yeah.
Like that must happen in other sites. So they must be ready for that. To your point, Sam, of how much we were hoping for this to include replanting afterward. Seems like that ought to be more clear in the first couple of paragraphs if we're trying to include it. Or do we say it is almost a secondary project? How many firms even do it other than something like the Intramural Conservation Nursery? I don't know.
Yeah.
So like, for example, on the St. Mike's natural area, there's I think 100+ acres of it in the floodplain are part of a USDA conservation easement. So we have actually much less say what goes on down there, and they've just completed like 2 months of invasive spraying.
Yeah.
There were a work crew, they were living on campus, a few Jamaican guys who were, because they like a lot of tough jobs, can't find local Americans to do it. And they were roaming and spraying and changing if they were close to the water. It was all of those things. But this was a group of hardworking, knowledgeable guys, but nothing was about. They had no plants with them. They had no sense of what was going to happen after. Like they're like, that's a firm that does this at big scale for the feds. It's like not even close to something they would say like, oh, let's look at this patch carefully and test the soil and consider a ground cover. Like, it's just not what these guys are up to. Like it almost felt military-esque. Like it's just sort of stance and approach. So that would be the broadest net, would be to include guys like this firm who could come and do that, probably most cost efficient. And then we're like, okay, they just nuked a bunch of spots. It's gone. Now do we second set of bids of people who are more sensitive
Right.
and more like adept to local ecology? And that's a second thing. Or could we really, if we include them, we'd have to know that some groups aren't capable of actually meeting that. They would only know how to propose the nuking and not the replanting. So if we want to only get bids that include replanting, we probably have to make that quite clear.
Well,
Like this is a different request than maybe other firms have read before, a little. Or we just see what happens and see who responds.
Yeah, I guess like I'm not necessarily in favor of us trying to scare away any contractor that isn't willing to do a replanting as part of it. We can just state that as a preference that hopefully will be clear to, the select board. And when it comes to reviewing bids, like I don't know the exact process, and I should probably make sure I'm clear on that. Ahead, I don't know if we can just make a comment at the select board meeting, or if we'll be allowed to review the bids and make a recommendation before, because we're going to, like, we sort of generated this RFP. It would seem a little bit weird to me if like we did all this work, it went out to bid, And then the select board basically just didn't even ask for our thoughts on any of the contractors that put their bids in, but I also don't know exactly how the process works. This will be the first one that like we've tackled since I've been on this commission. So I don't want to be too exclusive because it would be, like, you know, but at the same time, like I do think we have a strong preference for, you know, avoiding herbicides when possible and doing restoration. And I think that we want to be a good model for success, right? And how to do this safely and how to do this in a way that the community is comfortable with. And even if it is more expensive, it's like, wouldn't we rather do it right the first time and show other communities like this is how you do it? And it also helps probably you know, support more of the, you know, local economy and, you know, a lot of the values that I think we want to be promoting. I mean, I guess it's a little out of scope for conservation, but I feel like it's all kind of connected. You know, having like a healthy community, involving volunteers, like trying to do things that way. I think that yeah, I don't know, part of like what Trevian was talking about, just in terms of like the bigger scope of like herbicides and how that all feeds into this other like big system. It's very like anti like conservation in general, you know, like chemicals made at big factories that are probably harming the people who are making them and then the people who are applying them. And like it kind of perpetuates some of these like things that have gotten us to where we're at.
Yeah.
And so I feel like almost like morally it would make sense to sort of like try to favor whatever is going to support like the like local community and like more I don't know, more of like a community effort, you know, and like a model for like how we can do this like as a community and like for other folks. So I don't know if it costs more, like that might still be something that I'd be in favor of, but we'd have to talk about it based on the bids. Did you have a?
Can you check the chat?
Oh, sure.
That's one of the things. And the other one is that they open the bids, like that's a formal process. They open them all at the same time in the same place and have them. But then when they go to the select board, they're in the meeting materials and then people comment on them. And that's when like Adam has made a statement, like when they were doing, I think maybe one of the doors or the security, one of those, and he's like, I've worked with them, that place probably gonna cost us more money on like when they find other problems that it'll end up being more than the other bid that's actually more right now. And like, and then I think Carol Bounty was there and said, I value Adam's opinion. If he says go to the other one, we should go to the other one, even though it's more money. So like they don't always go to the cheapest one. People comment on them. So I feel like, and I think when we designed this, the thought was that they go out for bid, they'd come back and we look at them and see if we think they are good, and we would make a recommendation to the select board, like this is one that we think makes sense,
Yeah.
and see what they do with it.
I hope that's the process.
That's how I thought this was gonna go. Also, if we're using CRF money, are we approving that ahead of time? We don't know how much money it's gonna be, so like, we'd have to like get a bid and then like, we're gonna be involved in it either way.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. That's a different question. It would be like there are contracts and then we have to navigate that first and then talk about the funding because we don't even really know how much it's going to cost, you know, like it could be 10 grand, it could be 100 grand, you know, I'm not sure what kind of bids we're going to get. And so that's going to really inform how we move forward with any kind of funding. And so yeah, I think we got to just take one thing at a time, but I think I've got enough to do a little bit of digging myself and also work with Josh just to make sure we're clear on that. But that said, I guess I'm curious if we want to move forward with this as is. Yeah, I know we've kicked it around a bunch. It seems like the main.
Do you want to make a motion tonight? I drafted one, if people feel ready.
I remember my
ready.
last thing that
Oh,
it was if we did a bid and it was someone who wasn't gonna do planting, we say that, but like the plan has planting in it, we know they're not gonna plant anything. And we know what the cost is, but we know they want to do planting, we would then be able to plan for that, like, as part of what we're doing.
like we can't plant for you, but here's like.
Like, we know if we put the bids out and someone says, oh, we'll offer this planting for this much more money. And someone else is gonna do the invasive removal and it's so much less that we end up picking them, we still know we want to do planting, so we can still plan for doing that.
Yeah.
We would know ahead of time. We wouldn't just like last minute find out, oh, we need to get something in the ground really quick.
Yeah.
Like we would know ahead of time. We could then put another RFP out to plant things, or we know what the area is and we decide we're gonna do it ourselves or get volunteers to organize something to do this.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't have to be in the bid.
Yeah,
but we would know if it was and plan for it if it's not.
yeah, for sure.
I agree that if we put it in,
Mhm.
the addition that you had tonight, getting it somewhere in there in the goals, or which part did you think it should go in to express our interest in having you plant natives, restore?
I think probably we might want to mention it like up front. We could like, I don't know if it needs to go in the introduction, but probably the project goals and the evaluation criteria. Maybe somewhere else too. I'd have to like spend a couple minutes with the
Are we
document.
all in agreement around that? Cause I'm in favor of that, and I think it would make this RFP feel complete.
Yeah, so I think what I would do is you could make your motion and just say like with a provisional change that we add language that, you know, that specifically calls out, you know, planting native species as a part of.
Oh, you do that part. I'll do the first part of the motion. Can you-
Sure, you can read the motion and I can add on to it.
Can't do it? Can't double?
Do we want it required though, or optional?
That's just making it difficult for the note keeping. I mean, I don't know who's making a, one motion is a motion, so are you making a motion and then you're making a motion? or
No,
you're
I'll make
making
the
a
motion, but he's adding to it.
I can propose an update, which is allowed.
Okay.
So you just make your motion as
Okay.
is. I'll make a suggestion to modify it and then we
Right, and then
can,
we can have more
vote on that.
discussion, is my
Right.
understanding of
Right.
people.
We can modify it once.
So,
yeah.
so before you can, if you want to follow the rules, you don't have to. I'm just telling you what they are.
Yeah.
If she makes a motion,
Mhm.
you can't move to modify it unless someone seconds it and
Right.
it's voted on, or else it's tabled. You
Mhm.
can also, you can only move to modify after a vote has been taken. So.
I don't
Is that right?
think that's true.
That's true, that you, because otherwise this is what happens. I can make a motion and then I move that we have no trails in the ACF, right? And then you can move and say, I move that we have 100, or I move that we amend that to 100 trails without having a vote. So you've just cut me down, right? So I think that you do, I believe that the rules are that once a motion is taken, someone either seconds it or it's tabled, that you can't amend it until it's voted, but.
It has to be seconded and then it's up for discussion. That's when amendment can be proposed. And then we can vote on that. And then.
With the amendment,
Yes, exactly.
and
So
if that fails, then it goes back to no amendment,
yes.
original motion.
Yeah,
I think that's how it works.
And
But you have to make it to second to then discussion to then add the amendment, to
right, you
then,
can't amend without discussion.
right, it has to be in the discussion part,
Yep.
Yes.
I'll second.
So you can't just straight amend it.
right? Yeah, it has to get to the discussion phase.
I don't get this.
So Jeanette, would you like to make a motion?
Okay, I move that the Richmond Conservation Commission support moving forward with the RFP to obtain professional expertise to manage invasive species at Volunteers Green and Over Rocker Park, with a preference for non-herbicide methods where feasible, and careful justification, targeting, and safeguards for any proposed herbicide use.
Okay,
I
that's
could-
way too long for the minutes, so
I
you'll
could-
have to
I could
send me
send it
that.
to you.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
do that. That's a lengthy.
Are we good with that, everyone?
Well, somebody, is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, so we have a motion from Jeanette, seconded by Kit.
Their discussion.
Now we move on to discussion. Would anyone like to make any comments on that motion?
Can you please reread it? It was quite,
Sure.
thank you.
Okay, I move that the Richmond Conservation Commission support moving forward with the RFP to obtain professional expertise to manage invasive species at Volunteers Green and Over Rocker Park, with a preference for non-herbicide methods where feasible, and careful justification, targeting, and safeguards for any proposed herbicide use. And I can definitely send that to you. So.
And I would like to make a amendment.
Can we
Um,
we have the discussion about that first?
We can.
So when you say move forward, you mean put to bid? Is that what
Yes.
the move forward is? Okay. Okay. And when you said, with a preference, so I guess in hard language, what does that mean? With a preference, so prioritizing.
Yeah, prioritize.
Okay,
Is that in line with what the RFP already says? Because I feel like the RFP should speak for itself, and that if we just put it out to be a bid as is, that we are comfortable with the way it is, unless we're making provisional upgrades. I appreciate you clarifying that we would prefer non-herbicide, application or, methods to be used, but I don't know if it necessarily has to be in the motion.
Okay.
We could basically just say, that we, move to approve the RFP, reviewed tonight, and in the packet materials with this provisional update to, add replacement with natives.
You're on.
What's that? Okay. You could do that. I could reiterate that. Yeah, but I feel like we've reviewed the RFP.
Well, can you make an amendment?
I can. I just want to make sure that we have a chance to discuss, because the other thing that's worth noting is like you can't amend multiple times. Basically, what happens if amendment fails, you kind of have to table the motion, and then somebody has to make a new motion. If we're following Robert's rules, that's the way it works, is essentially the whole thing kind of fizzles, and then you start over. And either somebody could just make a modified motion, or we could return to a motion that then gets amended. But you're not supposed to amend multiple times, probably to keep things from getting too confusing. I guess it's confusing either way. But just want to make sure that anyone else here has a chance to to weigh in before I make an amendment.
I just want to know if we're making the plantings like an optional or a requirement of the bid.
You're wondering?
Like, how are we wording this? That when we discussed that, is if we're gonna put the plantings in, or we'd say like with the option of planting, or that they are required to provide planting in the bid?
I think it would be optional, but we
Okay.
can state a strong preference for it in the RFP, and that it's in the evaluation criteria. I think that for any RFP, contractors can basically say, I'd like to bid on this, and here's what I can do for you. And they might not be able to meet some of the criteria, but maybe they can beat somebody else on price by $5,000. And the town says, hey, that's fine with us. We can, find a way to make up the difference, depending on the project. So
I just want to make sure it's not like a criteria where that it'd be like an incomplete bid because they had to have this thing, they didn't have it, but they had everything else, and then we're like, well, that's an incomplete bid, so we shouldn't. I just don't want to eliminate if that's the only thing missing. However we word this.
I think it's a preference. It'd be in the evaluation criteria, but it's not, technically none of this is required. They might just have a really bad bid. We could get a bid from somebody that's just saying like, hey, I'll do it, and like give them very minimum amount of information. We might say, it doesn't seem like you have, your materials together, and we don't feel like we should move forward with you, even if you have a really, good rate, whereas somebody who's really organized and submits, most of the materials is going to be more competitive. Any other thoughts or questions before amendments?
Just say, I agree that if we had a requirement that they replant, we might end up with almost no bids.
Yeah.
So
I agree.
until we know better, I agree, it should stay open at this point.
I also just want to know, because if I'm the one that's
This works for me.
editing it, I want to know how to write it.
Yeah.
Okay, give me one quick second. I'm just writing up.
Just a point of clarity, is this motion, once passed, mean we're done with it? We send it to the select board?
Yeah, or I'll at least coordinate with Josh to make sure that we're taking next steps, like with the provisional change that we add that in. So basically, we're going to empower somebody, Trevor or myself, to add this language, and then that we trust that person to do that responsibly. And then I will work with Josh and or the select board to make sure that this follows the proper process. I don't think it's got to go to the select board. Maybe it does, but I think I can just work directly with Josh to put it out for bid. And then the select board can decide whether or not they want to, what they want to do with that once like the bids are in. I could be wrong, but I'll certainly work with Josh to make sure that I follow the proper process for that, whether that's go to the select board or go to Josh. I can make sure that I do that.
It's
Did you send that to me? Because I have to put it in the notes.
yeah,
Even if
yeah.
it gets amended,
I can-
you've sent it to
yeah.
me? Okay,
I can
thank you,
right
because
now.
I'll try to get these done.
I'll
tonight.
email it to you.
Thank you.
Give me just 1 second. Did I write this up?
Thanks. Let's see.
Okay, so I would like to make an amendment to the pending motion to remove the herbicide language to make this more straightforward and to add the restoration and native planting. So I'll read what I would like to change the motion to, which would be, I move to approve the request for proposals titled Invasive Plant Species RFP 8/24/26 included in the packet materials tonight, with a provisional update that we add a preference for including restoration and native planting as part of the project goals and evaluation criteria. And I can
You
send,
please send
I
them
can,
to
yeah, I will do that.
These are very wordy, lengthy motions.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, so that's what I got. If anyone would like to second that amendment.
a second amendment.
Oh, you you did.
Great. Any further discussion? Okay, in that case, we will take a vote. If everyone could state their name and their vote. Sam Pratt, aye.
Trevor Brooks, aye.
Trevi Sanger, aye.
Oh, Jeanette Malone, aye.
Pitt Emery, aye.
Melissa Oliver, aye.
Okay, great. Unanimously approved. Great. So I'll reach out to Josh about next steps after we get that provisional update added, which I can probably do, Trevor, because that's pretty simple to add
Okay,
unless you wanted to do it.
I don't care.
Okay.
I just know if you want, I could update it. I thought it was, I updated it, sent it to you, and like, all right, this looks good, looks inconsistent with
That
what
works
we
too,
wanted.
if you
Then
wanna
it'd be
just-
like a check on that,
Yeah, if you want to make the changes.
but I actually don't really care. So,
Okay.
or you could write it and send it to me.
How about you draft the changes, comment style the way you did it
Yeah.
before? Send it to me. I'll just approve and then
Okay.
send it to Josh.
Okay.
Cool. With that, we are past time. So we have a few things that will have to get kicked to next meeting.
Can I have 30
Stormwater.
seconds?
What's that?
Can I have 30 seconds?
Yeah, if you want to just yeah.
If people could review the link to the legislature thing, specifically the powers section and duties of conservation commissions, just I want people, I don't know if people knew this or they already don't know it, but the different powers that conservation commissions have, like, and where they're supposed to advise and the different things they can do within the town. And then for the stormwater wetlands, if anyone wants to discuss those with me, outside of the meeting, you can, because I've been trying to assist if I can in some way in helping the planning commission come up with some sort of stormwater rules, but I'm not sure how that's going so far. So that's it.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up and all the work that you're doing to get that added. But yeah, I mean,
The
I'd
wetland
encourage-
thing I haven't brought up at all, but that I'd like to discuss with people in the group first.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah, we'll have to continue to discuss. And then, yeah, the other stuff we're gonna have to table. I guess the river cleanup thing was just a random thing based off an email I got, so that's not a big deal. If we don't get to it, I just thought it was interesting. There is a webinar if anyone wants to learn about how to host a river cleanup. We don't have to talk about the tree planting workshop stuff. But Trevian, maybe I'll like try to link up with you on some of that stuff. We talked a bit about it, I think, last meeting. I think ideally we'd like to have some kind of CRF app or like a motion or something to try to get ourselves ahead of October, because we talked about maybe trying to do like a little tree planting workshop or drive or something like that at the farmers market in October. And if we don't talk about it until next meeting, if we're not prepared at all for discussion, then we're probably not going to have it in time for October. So that I think will just be a takeaway for a smaller discussion. So I'll just like reach out to you, Trevian, and we can see what we can come up with.
Okay.
I can help too.
The Intervale wants to come and maybe table with us.
Excellent.
The nursery.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool.
Yeah, so we'll have, that'll be a full agenda item next meeting, and we'll
That's
just
good.
want to organize so we have stuff, packet items to review. With that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Move, we adjourn.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks for staying a couple minutes late.
Thanks, Sam.
I will see you all next month.
Do you